The ER chief walked out of Mercy Ridge Medical Center laughing. 5 stretchers were still coming through the ambulance bay doors. Welcome to Quiet Badge's Stories. I'm glad you're here tonight. If you believe that the quietest people in any room are often carrying the heaviest weight, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Tonight's story is about a woman who had every reason to walk away, and chose to stay. It was October 14th, and the Cascades had been spilling rain onto Interstate 9 for 11 hours straight. A logging truck lost its rear axle on the eastbound overpass at 7:22 p.m. 4 vehicles behind it never had a chance: a minivan, a pickup, a sedan carrying a pregnant woman driving home from her baby shower, and a school van returning from an away game, the driver of which braked too hard on wet asphalt and clipped the guardrail before stopping just short of the median. 5 patients arrived at Mercy Ridge within 6 minutes of each other. Dr. Roland Fitch, Medical Director of Emergency Services, was already in the parking lot with his car keys in his hand. It was his daughter's birthday. He had mentioned it to the charge desk 3 times in the past 2 hours. He had also mentioned that the incoming storm surge was going to make Interstate 9 impassable by 9, and that he lived on the other side of it. He was not wrong about the storm. He was wrong about everything else. When Paramedic Crew Chief Dana Ossie pushed through the bay doors, calling out patient conditions, Fitch stepped back inside. Not to help, but to assess the situation, which was what he always called it when he needed someone to blame before anything went wrong. We've got 5, Ossie said. 2 critical, 3 serious, chest trauma, pediatric, pregnant, junctional bleed, and a crush injury in that order. Fitch looked at the board. 3 of his 4 attending physicians were upstairs. The 4th was stuck in an elevator that had lost power when the transformer on the east wing shorted out 20 minutes ago. His 2 senior residents were in surgery. His charge nurse, a woman named Patrice who had worked this ER for 19 years, was on a call with a patient's family in the corridor. And then there was Meg Dunbar. Meg was standing near the supply cart at the far end of the trauma bay with a clipboard, doing what she did every evening. Finishing the inventory that day shift always left incomplete. She was 38 years old, dark hair cut short above the collar of her bright blue scrubs, gray eyes down on the page. She had worked the night shift at Mercy Ridge for 14 months. She was the nurse the residents went to when they were afraid of their own orders. She was the nurse the paramedics called by name. She was also, as far as Fitch was concerned, the nurse most likely to file a safety complaint on a Tuesday. He had received 4 of them in the past year. 3 were about staffing. One was about a teenager named Damon Price, who had waited 47 minutes for a respiratory consult while Fitch was in a budget meeting, and whose asthma attack had become a code before anyone reached him. That last complaint had gone to the state licensing board. The investigation was ongoing. Fitch looked at Meg, then at the bay doors and the rain and his keys. "Dunbar," he said. She looked up. "You've got the floor." He gestured at the 5 stretchers rolling in. "Show us what your notes look like in practice." Patrice had come back around the corner. She stopped moving. Jamie Stokes, the second-year resident, stared at Fitch. "Dr. Fitch, there are 5 critical." "I'm aware of the count." Fitch straightened his coat. "I'll be reachable by phone. Tridge in order of acuity. Document everything. Call upstairs if you need surgical." He looked once more at the board, then at the security camera above the charge desk. "This is a staffing situation, not a crisis. Handle it." He walked out. The ambulance bay doors swung shut behind him. The rain hammered the glass like it was trying to get in. Patrice looked at Meg. Meg put the clipboard down. "Bay 1 gets chest trauma," she said. "Bay 2 gets the teenager. Bay 3 takes the pregnant patient. Bay 4 is for the child. Bay 5 gets crush injury." She pulled gloves from the wall dispenser and snapped them on without looking. "Move." No one asked if she was authorized, they moved. The chest trauma in Bay 1 was Walter Beam, 67, a retired firefighter from Creswell with a collapsed right lung and 2 broken ribs. His oxygen saturation read 81 and falling. The paramedic riding in with him, a young man named Ortega, was still holding Walter's hand when Meg arrived. He kept asking about his wife, Ortega said. "Is she here?" "Still on scene, minor injuries, she's coming." Meg leaned over Walter. His color was wrong. His breathing carried the shallow, interrupted quality of a man whose chest could no longer do what a chest was supposed to do. "Walter," she said, "I need you to look at me." His eyes moved, sharp eyes for a man in this much pain. "You ever work a structure fire where the smoke got ahead of you?" His mouth moved, something like yes. "This is the same thing. I'm going to fix your air. Hold on to that." Jamie appeared at her elbow with a needle decompression kit, hands trembling. "Dr. Stokes," she said, not looking up. "Your hands are shaking because you're thinking about the procedure instead of the patient. Look at Walter. He held a fire hose for 30 years. He is not going to let you down." Jamie exhaled once, his hands stilled. Second intercostal, Meg said, mid-clavicular, you know this. He did it. The rush of air was immediate. Walter's chest rose differently, his saturation started climbing. Good, Meg said. Stay with him. She was in Bay 2 before the monitor in Bay 1 finished its update. The teenager in Bay 2 was Lily Goss, 16, sophomore, still in her volleyball uniform. The dressing on her right thigh had failed. The medics had packed the wound twice en route. It had not been enough. Dr. Aaron Tully appeared in the doorway. He had come down from the 3rd floor by the fire stairs, white coat rumpled, reading the situation in real time. Femoral, he asked. High junctional, Meg said, not femoral. But if we don't get ahead of it in the next 4 minutes, it won't matter. Tully looked at the wound, then at Meg's hands, which were applying pressure at the crease of the hip in a way that made him pause. That's not standard placement, he said. No, she said. He didn't ask anything else, he just helped. Lily's phone was on the counter, the screen read Mom. It had been lighting up since she arrived. Answer it, Meg said. Cooper, the ear tech, picked it up. He got as far as hello before a woman's voice came through so broken it barely sounded like language. Meg kept pressure with one hand and leaned toward the phone. Mrs. Goss, this is Nurse Dunbar at Mercy Ridge. Lily is with us. She's fighting. We're fighting with her. She needs you to drive safely. A sob. Is she going to be okay? Meg looked at the monitor. She looked at Lily's face. She is going to know you came, Meg said. Drive safely. She handed the phone back to Cooper and returned both hands to the work. The power failed at 8:09 p.m. Not all of it. Backup generators caught most of the load. But Bay 3 went dark for 4 seconds, and 4 seconds in a room with a 30-week pregnancy and a woman who had already been through a crash at highway speed was not nothing. Clara Dunn's voice came through the curtain, high and rigid. Why did the lights go out? Someone tell me. Meg was already in the doorway. The backup is on, she said. You have power, I have you. Clara was 34, glass still catching in her hair under the fluorescent light. Her seatbelt had done its job and also left a bruise across her abdomen that Meg looked at for 2 seconds longer than anything else. Baby's been quiet, Clara said, since the crash. Maybe before, I don't know, I was scared. That's okay. Meg reached for the portable ultrasound on the rack. It had 22% battery. Keep talking to me, tell me the baby's name. Clara blinked. We weren't telling anyone until... Tell me, just me. A pause. Rosie, if it's a girl, it's a girl. Then let's check on Rosie. The probe found what it needed to find, a flutter, small and stubborn and present. There she is, Meg said. Clara broke down. Meg kept scanning. Seatbelt trauma can develop, Meg said, not to frighten her but because Clara deserved the truth. We're watching you every 2 minutes. If anything changes, you tell whoever is in this room immediately. You don't wait to be polite. Clara nodded. Say it back. I tell whoever is in the room, I don't wait. Good. Bay 4 held an 8-year-old boy named Finn Duffy, who had arrived awake, which had led the intake team to place him lower on the list. This was a mistake, Meg corrected the moment she saw his chart. Quiet children in trauma were never good. Finn's father, Gordon Duffy, had been driving the van. He was still on scene. Finn's mother was 40 minutes away in the storm. Finn lay under a warming blanket with his eyes half open. He had a splinted arm and a bruise under his left ribcage that Meg did not like. Cooper stood beside him, talking quietly about baseball. It wasn't working. Meg pulled a chair to Finn's bedside and sat, unusual enough that Finn turned his head. Hey, she said. Hi, his voice was thin. That's a pretty good bruise you've got. He looked at his arm. Does it look cool? Very cool. Listen, I need you to do one thing. Keep your eyes on my face. Can you do that? He focused on her. His pupils were even. His color was marginal. Good, she said. What does your dad call you when he's in a good mood? The smallest smile. Captain. Then hold on, Captain. We need your dad to come home to you. She stood and looked at Cooper. Her voice dropped. Blood products, warming, repeat pressure checks every 90 seconds. If his pressure dips below 80, you find me before you find the order sheet. Cooper nodded once. Bay 5 was Harriet Prue, 74, a retired high school librarian from Roseburg, who had been pinned under the dashboard of her sedan for 19 minutes before fire crews cut her free. Her legs were wrong in a way that announced itself before the vitals did. Tully had made it to Bay 5 ahead of Meg. He read the labs on the portable tablet and went quiet. Crush syndrome, he said when she appeared beside him. Late recognition, she said. We protect the kidneys and watch the compartments. Harriet looked at both of them, with the patience of a woman who had survived 74 years of things not going as planned. Say what you need to say, she told them. I'm old, not fragile. Meg pulled the warming blanket over Harriet's legs, with a gentleness that had no performance in it. "Mrs. Prue, we caught this. It's going to be an unpleasant night, but we caught it." Harriet studied her face, then she said, "My late husband was Army. He stood the way you're standing right now." The room went still. Meg met her eyes. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is one, honey." She checked the labs against protocol and began issuing orders. Not dramatic ones, careful ones, fluids at a controlled rate, urine output monitored, pain managed, compartment pressure checked on a schedule. Every movement had a reason. Tully watched her work. He had stopped questioning her methods 40 minutes ago. At 9:03 p.m., the radio at the charge desk crackled. "Fire rescue inbound. One additional victim, Interstate 9, adult male, driver of the school van. Extrication complete, ETA 4 minutes. Critical." From Bay 4, a small voice said, "Is that my dad?" Nobody had told Finn. He had known anyway. Meg went to his doorway. "People are bringing him here right now." Finn's lip trembled. "Is he hurt bad?" She didn't lie to him. "He is, but he is on his way to you." Gordon Duffy came through the bay doors at 9:07 with 2 firefighters and pressure readings that made Tully curse under his breath. Pelvic fracture, abdominal bleed. The kind of numbers that meant the or and nothing else. Meg held Gordon's wrist. His pulse was there, and then almost not. "Your son is in Bay 4, she said quietly. "He goes by Captain, apparently. He is waiting for you." Gordon's eyes, half closed under the oxygen mask, shifted toward the sound of her voice. His monitor, which had been declining, held. Tully looked at her. Did he respond to that? "He responded to something worth fighting for," she said. "Use whatever keeps them here." They moved Gordon to the service elevator at 9:14. The surgical resident confirmed at 9:22 that they had him on the table. From Bay 4, Cooper said very quietly, "Finn, your dad is upstairs. They're helping him." Finn pressed his face into his blanket and shook with the particular grief of a child who has been trying to be brave for longer than any child should have to. Meg adjusted his warming blanket. She did not tell him to stop. The cameras above the charge desk recorded all of it. They also recorded what happened at 9:31 p.m., when Dr. Roland Fitch walked back through the ambulance bay doors. He had made it halfway home before the road flooded. He had turned around in the dark and driven back, and the story he had rehearsed on the way was about returning to support his team. He walked into an ER where every patient was still alive. He walked into a room where a nurse in bright blue scrubs was running the board with 2 residents, and a tech who had stopped asking permission to do their jobs 3 hours ago. He walked into something he had not planned for. "Dunbar," he said too loudly, "status." She looked at him without surprise. Bay 1, needle decompression successful, patient stable. Bay 2, hemorrhage controlled, vascular consult in transit. Bay 3, fetal heartbeat confirmed, maternal pressure stable. Bay 4, pediatric patient stable, father in surgery. Bay 5, crush syndrome managed, kidneys protecting. He blinked. The additional patient? In the OR, critical but viable. Fitch looked around, at Tully, who was looking at the floor, at Patrice, who was not, at Jamie Stokes, who had placed 3 IV lines tonight without a single error after the moment Meg told him to stop thinking about his hands. "Good," Fitch said carefully, "good. I came back as soon as the road." "I know when you came back," Meg said. The room shifted. Harriet's voice drifted from Bay 5, clear as a school bell. That was fast for a man who left. A sound moved through the ER staff. Not quite laughter. The sound of people who had been holding something in for a long time finally putting it down. Fitch's expression hardened. He looked at the security camera above the charge desk. The red recording light blinked steadily, as it had been blinking all night. What he did not know, what no one in that room except Meg had thought to consider, was that paramedic Ortega's body camera had been running an automatic quality assurance upload to the county EMS medical director's secure server since the moment his crew arrived. A protocol instituted 11 months ago after a different incident and a different night. The feed had been live. It had captured the ambulance bay. It had captured the doors. It had captured Dr. Roland Fitch, walking out past 5 incoming stretchers with his car keys in his hand. The EMS medical director had been watching from her office for 43 minutes. She had already called the state health department twice. The ambulance bay doors opened again at 9:44 p.m. 2 men in rain-dark Air Force service dress entered. Behind them came a woman in a gray jacket with a federal ID on her lapel. The taller man had silver hair and the deliberate walk of someone who had spent years learning to enter rooms without causing panic. He found Meg across the floor the way people find each other when they have served in the same place at the same time. His name was Colonel Wade Innes. He had been Meg's commanding officer during her second deployment. He had also been the officer who signed her separation papers 14 months ago, with a commendation that ran 3 pages and a note she had read once and put away in a drawer. He stopped 10 feet from her. "Sergeant Dunbar," he said. The ear did not gasp, it went absolutely still. Tully looked at the rank insignia on Innes's collar, then at Meg. Fitch said, "Who are you people?" The woman in the gray jacket stepped forward. "Special Agent Norma Gaines, Office of Inspector General, Department of Health and Human Services." She held up her credentials. "Dr. Fitch, Mercy Ridge has been under review for 4 months. Tonight's events accelerated our timeline." Fitch's chin came up, looking at what exactly? Tridge decisions correlated to insurance status, a pediatric death last spring. 4 internal safety complaints that were never forwarded to the licensing board as required. She paused. A body cam feed that has been recording since 7:28 this evening. The color left Fitch's face. Innes was still looking at Meg. "You always did find the worst possible rooms to be the only person in," he said. "It was 1 room," she said, 5 patients. "It usually is." He looked at the board. "All alive?" "For now." "For now" is what rescue people call a good night before the paperwork starts. Meg looked at her gloves. "Why are you here, Colonel?" State Medical Network flagged the EMS feed and called County. County called the Air Force Field Liaison because one of the van's passengers has a dependent ID from a nearby base. "The base called me because your name was on the charge board." A pause. "I've had your file on my desk for 14 months, Raven." She didn't answer. Fitch tried one more time. Whatever her background, she performed beyond nursing scope in at least 3 bays tonight. That is a liability. "You abandoned 5 critical patients," Tully said, "to make a birthday dinner." The room held its breath. Fitch turned. "That is a gross mischaracterization of a staffing decision." "It is what the body cam shows," Agent Gaines said quietly. Fitch looked at the recording light above the charge desk. He looked at the doors. He looked at Agent Gaines. He said nothing else. Gordon Duffy made it out of surgery at 11:18 p.m., the surgical resident called down on speaker. Meg held the phone so Finn could hear the words himself. "Your dad is stable. He needs time, but he is stable." Finn pressed his face into his warming blanket and shook, the way children do when something they have been holding up inside finally gets to rest. Cooper set a cup of apple juice on the tray beside him and said, "You did good, Captain." Finn drank it without looking up. After a while he said, "Can I see him?" "Soon," Meg said, "when he wakes up." "Will you tell him I wasn't scared?" Meg looked at the boy. She thought about what it cost an 8-year-old to hold himself together for 2 hours, in a room where the walls were too thin and everything echoed. "I'll tell him exactly what happened," she said. "That's better than not scared." Finn thought about that. Then he nodded once, like a man accepting a fair trade. At 1 a.m., Agent Gaines sat across from Meg in the consultation room off the main corridor. "We need your formal statement," Gaines said. "You'll get it. Tell me about Damon Price first." A pause. "You know that name." "I filed a complaint about him in April." Gaines opened her folder. "His family has filed a civil claim. Your safety report matches the incident timeline exactly. It was part of what opened this investigation." Meg was quiet for a moment. "He was 16, she said." "Yes." "He was alone when it happened." "Yes." Meg looked at her hands on the table. They were still. They were always still when she needed them to be. It was the one thing that had never left her. Through deployments and mountain rescues, and the night on the canyon wall, when rotor wash filled the air with dust, and she had reached down into the dark for someone who was not there anymore. She had carried that stillness home with her, and spent 14 months trying to make it useful. "I'll give you the full statement," she said, "all of it." Dr. Roland Fitch was placed on administrative leave before morning. The county EMS body cam footage was submitted as evidence the following week. The state health department audit took 11 weeks and produced a report that named Fitch's decisions in specific, unambiguous language. It also named the 4 safety complaints that had been buried. It also named Damon Price. 2 people were terminated. 1 license was suspended. A new policy went into effect requiring all internal safety complaints to be forwarded to an independent board outside hospital administration within 72 hours without exception. Damon Price's family settled. The hospital issued a formal acknowledgement that took 18 months to produce and 12 words to say what it needed to say. The 4 rules that went up above the charge desk at Mercy Ridge were not printed by administration. They were typed by Patrice on her lunch break and taped to the wall in a plastic sleeve, and nobody took them down. Every patient gets seen, every concern gets reported. No administrator overrides clinical judgment. No one is ever just a nurse. Meg objected to the last line. She said it implied the previous 3 needed explaining. Patrice said that was exactly why it was there. 2 months after the flood, Gordon Duffy came back to Mercy Ridge walking with a cane and Finn at his side. Finn walked directly to the charge desk and handed Meg a drawing. It showed a hospital. There was a figure in the center wearing blue, a nurse. Around her, 5 smaller figures in beds. Above the whole scene, in uneven second-grade letters, it read, "She stayed." Meg turned the drawing over once. Then she taped it to the cabinet behind the charge desk. Below Patrice's rules, and above the inventory clipboard she still finished every night. Innes called that evening. "I heard you taped a child's drawing to the charge desk," he said. "Word travels fast." "It always did with you." A pause. "How are you sleeping?" "Better than I was." She looked through the break room window at the floor, where Jamie Stokes was running a trauma assessment without being asked, and Cooper was labeling the airway cart in letters large enough to read from across the room. "The work helps." It always did. She hung up and finished her coffee. Outside, the rain had started again. Not a storm this time, just rain. The ordinary kind that washed the parking lot clean and made the lights in the ambulance bay glow amber against the dark. She clipped her badge to her scrubs and walked back out to the floor. Patrice handed her a chart without looking up. 2 incoming, chest pain and a fall. Meg looked at the board. At the empty bays and the names that had filled them, and the ones that would fill them again and again as long as this place stood. "Bay 1 gets chest pain," she said. "Fall gets fast track unless vitals say different." Cooper was already moving. Jamie was already gloved. No one looked toward the door where Fitch used to stand. The hospital did not go quiet that night. It went to work. And Meg Dunbar, the nurse Dr. Fitch had handed 5 dying patients as a test he expected her to fail, understood something she had known in other rooms, in other storms, in the particular silence that follows a rescue when the helicopter lifts away, and the only sound left is the one you carried out with you. The work was never about proving anything to anyone. It was about staying when leaving was easier, about choosing the person in front of you over the fear inside you, about refusing, even once, to treat a human life like a problem someone else handed you. That was what she had always done. In the mountains, in the dark, in a flooded ER on a Tuesday night in October, with 5 stretchers and no backup, and a director walking out the door still laughing. She had stayed. That was why they followed her.